Hey, most business owners don't think they're making a growth decision. They think they're just moving forward. Sometimes that is the right move. But when growth goes unexamined, it's worth slowing down long enough to understand the choices you're making and the choices that you have. Stick around. That's what we're talking about today.
This is the Franchise Pitfalls and Profit Show. Each week, we bring you the challenges and triumphs of being in the franchise development and consulting business. The things you need to make money faster. And now your host, one of the most successful franchise developers in North America, Don Shin.
Hey, welcome back to Franchise Pitfalls and Profits. And as the intro video says, I'm Don Shin. This show is going to be about real mechanics of growth, how to build the right way, how to avoid the mistakes that quietly stall good growth and good businesses. And today's going to be about creating stronger systems, or thinking about creating stronger systems that can actually carry the scale that you're entering into. So over the last couple of episodes, you've heard a few interviews, especially the last one, that lined up very closely with the conversation we've been having around growth, scaling, and business ownership and business founding. In that last episode, I talked to Matt Rivera. You heard someone who is scaling across multiple brands with multiple units. Nothing flashy, but key here, spoiler alert, nothing rushed. In fact, that's what Matt had talked about, how he got all wrapped up in stuff, opportunities. Everything looked terrific. But his success has been when he slowed down and thoughtfully thought through his expansion. And that's what I want to follow up with you today about, not by replaying what we said, but if you missed that episode, it was last week's episode. But I want to talk about naming the principle underneath what Matt and I were talking about, because here's what I see all the time. Most owners don't think they're making a growth decision. Yeah, they make individual choices as things are going on, as new businesses are coming in, new businesses coming in. So they just think they're moving forward and things are great. They think they're capitalizing on this momentum, and they think they're responding to opportunity. But sometimes that's not true. Sometimes it's true, and that's fine. But sometimes keeping their momentum is not the right choice. The typical business owner's default activity or action is to keep going, try to keep pushing that momentum forward. It isn't the right choice for everyone all the time. And that's what this episode is going to be about. It's about stopping. Well, it's not actually about stopping. It's about pausing a little bit. Really, it's about slowing down a little bit so that you can make better choices and make deliberate decisions about the growth that you're experiencing. Does that make sense? I hope that's starting to make some sense. Now, we're talking about taking a second look at your growth. So again, not to slow it down. I'm not telling you to slow down necessarily, but I'm wanting you to understand what's going on before the momentum carries you, over a cliff. I want you to be able to decide the right path for you, for your particular business. I hope this is making sense. If it does, keep listening. If it doesn't, keep listening anyway, because I want you to understand this. This is a fundamental principle that's just been burning a hole in my mind of how important this is in the marketplace. Growth doesn't become risky because you're ambitious. growth becomes risky when it goes unexamined. That's the core of what I'm talking about today. So let's talk about path selection versus, again, just activity that may try to keep your momentum moving forward. There's an important distinction here that most owners never stop to make. The difference between activity and path selection. Activity feels productive, it feels good, it feels responsible, more conversations. It's exciting, maybe, wow, we're opening a new location. Maybe we're franchising and yeah, we've got a new location, a new unit we're going to open. Maybe you're contemplating taking on a second brand like Matt did, took on a bunch of brands early. It feels like leadership. But honestly, that activity is not selecting the right path for you, the personal wealth you want to build, or the growth of the business that you founded. This forces a consideration of trade-offs. Path selection does, and path selection will narrow your options, but in a good way, not in a bad way, but in a good way. So most people stay busy instead of slowing down to make that choice. When I see growth, that kind of growth, and it rarely starts with a big strategic declaration. We're growing, we're making a commitment to grow. What it normally starts with is a series of reasonable steps. Hey, boss, we got this opportunity over here. Go pursue it. Give it a shot. Let's take it on. And the opportunity seems to make sense to you, the owner or the founder. We already know how to do this, maybe, so it's just extending our circle of service. Now we're getting out of that, but we already know how to do this. Path selection may look like, oh boy, that'd be foolish if we didn't consider this. But none of that is necessarily reckless. Again, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that's 100% wrong. But at some point, movement quietly becomes the direction you're going. And you don't even realize it. You don't even think of it. And I think at a minimum, you're doing yourself a disservice if you allow this to just happen. And possibly, honestly, bigger picture, you really could be damaging the baby that you bore, the business that you started, that you're so invested in mentally, psychologically, as well as financially. You could actually be hurting that business because you didn't slow down long enough to think through the growth and think through the scaling. So if you never stop to ask, what does this commitment mean to us? What am I committing to? If you never stop or slow down long enough to ask, what does this make harder or maybe impossible later on? If you never ask, what path am I choosing? Then the path and the marketplace is choosing it for you. And that's how owners end up saying down the road, maybe years later, hey, I never planned for this to happen. It just kind of happened. Again, it will choose for you if you do not slow down enough to think it through and make your own choices and make your own decisions. These things don't just happen. They get built. One somewhat apparently reasonable step at a time, but you're not examining what's going on. You're not examining the steps that you're now taking. All right. So there is a cost, and this is key. There is a cost to not choosing. Here's what makes unexamined growth tricky. Here's why it is tricky. The cost is not going to show up in a big way right away. Early on, it just looks like success. It just feels good. Revenues are up. As I said, you're getting out of your normal footprint of business and service, and that's now getting bigger. Hey, this is good. And it seems like all you've got on your plate is options. But the costs will arrive later. And when you allow this to happen, the cost actually compounds. I see it show up as complexity creep. All of a sudden, systems that worked so well before, you're kind of scratching your head going, why is it that this working now? Well, it's not working now because it wasn't designed to carry the weight of the load of the new business. Another factor is your talent, your people. There's a strain. Good people get stretched thinner as you're growing. And it's not necessarily because they're incapable of the growth. It's just because suddenly the priorities aren't clear, as clear as they were before when we operated in our normal sphere. Or in some cases, honestly, their people might be stretched because the growth is requiring more of them than you're operating your business in the normal levels and in the normal way that you've always operated. So it could very well be a capability situation. Another thing is what I call decision fatigue. I've mentioned this before, and it's not just from working too hard, but that can start to creep in on your people. But I'm now talking to you, the founder. This fatigue is coming from carrying too many unspoken factors or assumptions. In all, this seems like good chaos, or I'll say good confusion. But suddenly people are unclear what they can do, what they're allowed to do, what their framework and responsibilities are, and what they're not allowed to do. So what are they going to do? What happens then is more decisions start to go back to you, the owner, and this decision fatigue lands right in the owner's or the founder's lap. These aren't penalties for growing. I'm not judging people who are going through this. If you're going through this, I'm not telling you to never consider growth because of these things. I'm just saying when these things are happening, they're not penalizing you, but they're signals. These paths don't tolerate ambiguity for very long. They expose what hasn't been built for growth yet. That's the key. Your business was built to go a certain level and at a certain speed and to a certain capacity, and now you're asking more of it. And so these paths and this growth is going to expose whatever hasn't been examined to date. Again, under the new rules, under the new weight, under the new growth. Again, I am not anti-growth. I'm just anti-drift, and I'm anti-unexamined. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm anti not looking at this in a deeper way or in a further way. So it brings us to my last piece, and this is where I want to be very, very precise. This isn't about management's responsibility. It isn't about a leadership style. This is about owner's responsibility, ownership responsibility. So in this kind of last facet of our talk today, I'm talking to you, the founders of your company, the owners of your company. Don't just approve growth. You're responsible for the consequences. Owner's responsibility looks like questions that most people are avoiding and many owners avoid. And that is, well, what is this path of growth that I'm now starting to see? Why is it happening now? What does it require of me? What does it require of my existing team? What does it require of my existing capabilities as a business and load on this business? What do we have to become? Or can we handle this the way we are? What will it cost? We can't handle it at this pace going forward. So what is this growth going to cost me financially? Maybe again, systems or structurally or personnel, or you personally as the founder. Is this going to require more of you? Don't miss that last point. What is this going to mean to you? Hopefully you've gotten your business to a point where it's operating really, really well. You're starting to be able to take vacations. You've got a real good core operating team around you, and they're taking on a lot of responsibilities that you used to do yourself. This is going well. So now, what is this growth going to change as you as the owner and you as the founder? And so here's a quiet truth that I think is worth shining the light on it or naming it. You don't drift into multi-unit or multi-brand growth by accident. If you're the founder of a thriving independent business, you don't drift into franchising it, because there will be consequences to drift. Owners who scale well aren't necessarily bolder or bigger risk takers, but they are clearer. They pause. They examine what's going on. They deliberately choose, even when choosing feels slower than moving at the pace that seems to be coming at you. So I'm coming to the end of the episode today and our talk. So if you're listening and you're thinking, hey, we're growing, but it feels heavier than it should. We're busy. We are doing more. We might even be moving faster than we've ever moved before, but it is starting to get confusing. We are starting to see some chaos creeping in. If you're saying we keep adding without really thinking through or deciding on the growth in the ads, we're just doing it. That's not failure. That's okay. But these are now I'm asking you this. This should now be providing you with information. Again, these are signals, and you want to understand what growth is doing to you. You want to understand the growth that you're seeing. So I'm going to leave this with you. It's not a challenge, and I'm not saying you to massively go in and correct anything, but I think it's something that's worth noting, and this is how I want to wrap up. If someone looked at your recent growth decisions or allowing things to happen, if you hadn't deliberately made the decisions, would they see a clearly chosen path or a season where keeping the momentum simply made sense? You just allowed it to happen. You okayed these things at the time they've been happening. What would people see? Because sometimes just moving forward is an okay choice for you, is a good choice for you. But ownership means knowing when that's the choice you are making, not allowing, and you know why you're making that choice. This process and clarity, it will give you pause, but it will allow you to slow down and find good growth. It will help it be the right growth for you personally as the founder and the owner and the wealth that you want to build. It'll be the right growth for the business that you have. And if you deliberately make the choice, it will be the kind of growth that lasts. Hey, as always, if you enjoyed the episode, subscribe to our YouTube channel, ask me questions. Would love to engage more with you about this very, very important topic. Until next time.